What's up guys, it's Kristen from Anime Collective. So I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time. I'm finally getting it out for you guys this week. It is my guide to buying anime statues video. So I actually bought my first anime statue about 3 years ago and I've been collecting ever since. I've got a lot of statues on the way. I think I've ordered like 40 statues in the span of a couple years. So you can expect a lot of unboxings on the channel, but I've been doing this for quite some time and bought from a lot of different sites. So I kind of just wanted to share my knowledge about what I've learned within those years of collecting. I also want to let you guys know that I have a lot of unboxings on the way to the channel soon. I currently have a shipment on the way. I think it includes like 7 statues, so I'll have a lot of unboxings in the next few months. With that said, here's my guide to buying anime statues, and I'm going to kick things off with the difference between unlicensed and licensed statues. So the biggest and most obvious difference is that licensed studios have to obtain approval for any of the statues they make, and they have to obtain those licenses to make them. In comparison, unlicensed studios don't go through that licensing process, which means they aren't officially endorsed products. So how do you tell the difference? Well, sites will mark if they're licensed statues. They will not always mark if they're unlicensed, but if they are licensed, they will let you know. There are sites out there like FavorGK who sell both licensed and unlicensed statues, but if you're someone who prefers to only buy officially licensed products, there are other sites that only sell licensed statues like Comic Concepts, Spec Fiction, and Sideshow to name a few, but I'll talk about those more later on. One thing I will mention is that generally licensed studios have better quality control, and this is just because they're working directly with the licensors and they generally have to receive approval for every step of the process. Also, generally, I found the shipping with licensed studios, especially if you're someone who lives in the US, tends to be cheaper with licensed studios in comparison to unlicensed ones. This is because I usually buy from somewhere like Spec Fiction or Comic Concepts, which makes the shipping cheaper to the US in comparison to buying directly from the studio or from someone like FavorGK. However, if you are someone who lives closer to China or Japan, buying from those sites may be more efficient for you. I'll touch more in depth on shipping later on, but wanted to notice that difference real quick. There is one positive to buying unlicensed statues, and it really is just the variety of them. You never know sometimes if a licensed studio is going to obtain a license for that specific anime or manga you are into, and because of that, unlicensed statues are really appealing. And the reason there's so much variety is because those unlicensed studios don't have to go through that licensing process, which could be seen as a positive or a negative from some people. But I personally see it as a positive because they make statues from some series that licensed studios are never going to make statues of. Actually, let me rephrase that, may never make statues of, because there are some companies out there like Figurama who choose more obscure licenses, and I really appreciate them for that. And finally, I want to talk about customer service and listening to feedback because I have found that licensed studios are more responsive in listening to the community in comparison to unlicensed studios. For instance, KDC recently had a few hiccups with their Goku statue. He had a small gap between his hair. I know some people were receiving that issue with that head sculpt, but they were able to fix that for everyone, and they were really responsive to the community, which is really rare for an unlicensed studio, but there are some exceptions. Also, mine's on the way and I'm really excited to get that one, but I will have an unboxing of that one coming to the channel. But when it comes to issues with concept or a statue, unlicensed studios really don't have forms of contact that they can receive that feedback from. They don't have social medias generally, they don't have websites generally. There are those exceptions like KDC. But licensed studios have all of those social media pages. They even have groups on Facebook where they listen to the community's feedback, and that's just a real big positive for me to buying from them. A recent example of this is actually Figurama's Dororo statue. They recently made some changes to the eyes of Hyakkimaru. They added a new aggressive portrait for him, and they even changed the expression on Dororo's face as well. Those changes all look incredible, but they did listen to the community's feedback. I have that one pre-ordered, by the way, and I can't wait to unbox that one for you guys. Another thing is customer service. Now, I've generally found that licensed studios have better customer service in comparison to unlicensed ones. That's not to say there aren't exceptions. Sume, I'm looking at you and I'm sorry to call you out, but it's true. But customer service to me is the most important thing when buying from these sites because you're buying these statues that are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So it's really important you buy from someone you feel secure in buying from. And the next thing I want to talk about is recasts and bootlegs because they are prevalent in the anime statue community. I'm not hating on you guys who are buying recasts. I just personally do not recommend them. And I know some other content creators on YouTube have, and they've reviewed them in comparison to original statues. But I'm going to take a hard stance here. I really don't think recasts are good, and I don't think you should buy them. The reason why being you just never know what you're going to get with these recasts. You don't know really who you're buying from. It's just you don't know the quality you're going to get. And a lot of the times the quality is just as good as something you get with an anime figure like a Mega House or a Kotobukiya, which are around the same price, and I would just recommend buying one of those, if not a lower priced statue. Because you never know what you're going to get, and a lot of the times the quality isn't all that great, I would just recommend personally saving for a statue, one that you really like, and taking that money you would have put towards that recast and investing it in something in the future. Also, it really bothers me when I see these recast companies using the actual images of the original statue to sell their recasts. They also are very misleading. They never include hardly the fact that it's a recast in the listing or the title of what they're selling so that they can get someone to click through and be like, oh, this is a great price, and not realize it's a recast altogether and think they're buying the original statue. So don't get ripped off that way if you're looking for an original piece, because if something is too good to be true, it is too good to be true. If the price is too low, it's most likely a recast or a bootleg. Now, I completely get it. I get why recasts are appealing. They are way cheaper than the statue themselves, but they are just really risky to buy, and I personally can't recommend them. Another thing I want to say is that some unlicensed studios in particular like to rip off licensed studios' designs and concepts, and that is something I really just don't condone. So when it comes down to it, I only like buying statues from an unlicensed studio if it's a completely original work of art. Another thing to watch out for is knockoffs that are made of PVC. So you want to watch out for those specifically on sites like Wish. And actually, guys, I wouldn't recommend buying from Wish at all when it comes to anime statues. All in all, you really just have to be on the lookout for recasts and PVC pieces because those are prevalent out there as well. Sometimes the listings are misleading, so just be on the lookout. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is scales. There are all kinds of scales you can buy when it comes to anime statues. So the biggest one is going to be the 1:1 scale, and those statues are just accurate to the real life size of the character. You also have 1/2 scale statues, 1/3 scale statues like the Prime 1 Studio Guts Black Swordsman statue, which I just recently reviewed on the channel if you want to check that out. But you also have others like 1/4, 1/6, 1/8, and 1/7 also. So there's all kinds of different scales you can shop from. There are also WCF scale statues out there, which I think are probably the smallest scale you can buy for anime statues, but you can buy those from studios like G5 Studios, so those are an option as well. So what does that essentially mean? So if you buy a statue that is 1/7 scale, that statue is 7 times smaller than the full size of that character. So depending on your space or the budget, you can definitely shop from different scales, but definitely check the dimensions, because just because something is a smaller scale doesn't mean it's a small statue. To give you an example, Surge Studio Itachi right behind me, that guy is in 1/8 scale, but he is gigantic because of the Susanoo that's with him. He is actually bigger than the Pain statue I got from Jimei Palace, which is in 1/6 scale, so Pain himself is bigger than Itachi, but because of the Susanoo, Itachi is way bigger than that statue. Next thing I want to talk about is renders. So renders are basically a digital mock-up of a statue, so they're not the actual finished product, and sometimes you have to buy statues solely based off of those. I will say that I personally bought Surge Studio Itachi based off of a render, but that was one that I knew their previous work. Surge Studio had released statues before in the past. I had seen unboxings of those, so I had an idea as to how well they sculpted, painted, etc. So if there is a statue you're interested in that has a render picture, I would definitely look into their previous statues, especially released ones, so you can get an idea for the quality of statues they make before purchasing it. However, I will say this is something I do regardless of if it's just a render or a painted image. No matter what I'm purchasing, I always check to see someone's previous work because I want to know they have that track record of making quality pieces. The next point I want to make is a really important one. Always, always buy with goods and services on PayPal. Never pay with friends and family. If you pay with friends and family and something were to go wrong, you were never to receive your statue, someone scammed you, you would be pretty much shit out of luck. And I'm just saying that because I don't want you guys to make this mistake. I've seen it done time and time again that someone buys something with friends and family because I didn't want to pay that 2.9% fee. Trust me, guys, you want to pay that 2.9% fee. It's really not all that much in the end when you're buying something in the hundreds and thousands of dollars. You want to have that security if something were to go wrong or you were to get scammed that you used goods and services. This is something you should apply to no matter where you purchase your statues from, whether it be a Facebook group, an individual, or a site. Make sure you're using goods and services. Up next, I want to talk about the difference between deposits and full pay as well as installments. One important thing to know is that when a site puts up a statue for pre-order, they will give you the option to either pay the statue's full price or to pay a deposit only. So the deposit basically just allows you to pay only a small percentage of that statue up front. It reserves the statue for you. In comparison, the full price, obviously you're just paying the full amount up front. There's no real big difference there unless you have the money in hand and you just want to get it over with, that's fine. But if you're someone like me, I like just paying the deposit because I'm not out all that money up front. So when you pre-order with a deposit, the rest of your invoice will be due at the time of shipment with most cases, unless you've chosen to do an installment plan. So some sites allow you to do an installment plan, which essentially allows you to only pay a small percentage of that statue each month. So you're just making payments like you would with a credit card. And these installment plans are really nice, especially if you don't have all of that money up front. You can make those payments over time, and it's an easier way for you to afford a higher price statue. Another thing you want to look out for is terms and conditions when buying anime statues. So terms and conditions that I really want you guys to look into are shipping, return policies, cancellations, anything that is to do with the shipping, the purchasing of the statue altogether. There's also little tidbits of information in there that will be really helpful for you. For instance, there are some sites that let you cancel an item if it's over a certain amount of time past its expected arrival date. So there's just some helpful stuff in there that I want you guys to check out. Up next is one of the biggest questions I get, and that is shipping when it comes to anime statues. So this one is difficult because I know I get a lot of questions about how much will X statue be to ship. If it's something I personally have received before, I can kind of help you guys. But if it's a statue that I know absolutely nothing about, I've never received or unboxed, unfortunately, it's hard to really tell you guys an actual estimate of what that will be. I do my best to give you a general idea. But there's just so many factors that go into play with shipping. Location, size of the box, dimensions of the box, weight of the box, customs rates, shipping rates at the time. There's a lot that goes into it. So how will you know how much your statues are going to cost to ship? Unfortunately, you won't know until you receive that final invoice for your statue. I can't give you guys exact estimates, but I'm going to try to help you out here. If you're getting something that's a huge statue, a large, heavy statue, like Surge Studio Kisame, for instance, that one could cost as much as the statue cost itself. And for me, it actually cost me just over, I think, $400. It might have been under $500, actually. He was expensive. So if it's a larger statue, you might want to budget for like as much as that statue itself, if not more. I will say all of these estimates are shipped to the US, so depending on where you are located, it could be less or more. Smaller footprint statues, though, that weigh less, like for instance, Cloud Studio Datara to the US, cost me around $192 to ship. However, if you're getting something like a WCF scale, obviously that's going to be cheaper. But if you're getting something like that Surge Studio Kisame, you can expect to pay a lot of money for shipping. I will let you guys know, though, that even though I've purchased multiple anime statues, I still sometimes don't know what shipping is going to cost. And one that really surprised me was actually the Guillaume statue from TNT Studios. That one cost around $500, I think, to ship, which is crazy, but it's due to the weird dimensions of his box. I think he might even be in 2 boxes, if I remember correctly. But there's just so many different factors like that one that sometimes something may surprise you. Another thing with shipping is that it can take months, if not months and months, to get your statue. This depends on the location you're in. I'm based in the US, and it usually takes me around 2 months to get my statues. Granted, that's when something comes by boat. So depending on the method of shipping you choose, something could arrive sooner or later. Boat is always going to be the longest shipping, so definitely keep that in mind. So to give you guys an example, even though something may say it's arriving in December 2021, that estimate is going to be later with that shipping added and tacked onto that. So while it may say December 2021, this may be subject to delay, which I'll get into later. But December 2021 would probably be actually more like February 2021 by the time you'd actually receive your statue in hand. So that actually leads me to my next point, and I kind of touched on that, but that's estimated arrival dates. So even though something says it's arriving in December 2021 and it doesn't, don't freak out. That doesn't mean that you're being scammed. It usually just means that there's either hiccups in productions, there's delays, there's shipping issues. With the current state of the world, things are getting delayed more and more. So when you get that statue, what do you do if something actually arrives broken? This varies depending on if you bought a licensed or an unlicensed statue. I've found that licensed studios, I feel very comfortable buying from them because I know that if something were to come broken, there was an issue with shipment, they would handle it. Usually. I do know there's some leaning issues potentially with the Prime 1 Studio Eva, so we'll see when that comes. I'm actually getting that statue, if that is an issue. Because I know they haven't responded like the community would like with that one in particular, but I'm hoping that isn't a problem. So breakages kind of come with the territory, and it really just boils down to whether or not the studio packaged it well, even designed the statue well, because there's fragile pieces that can break, depends on if they sculpt them on it or off it. Just those choices they make can make it easier for something to break, or it could make the statue sturdier and not break at all. The smaller, less complex statues generally have a lot less breakages. I personally have had around 4 statues come broken, and the most notable and sad one is Surge Studio Kisame. He had a lot of issues, and that one's really sad. To give you an idea, WS Studio, I just recently received their Yamamoto statue, which I reviewed on the channel. That one came with a lot of breakages, and that just came down to the design choices they made. Not to mention the packaging wasn't 100% all that great, obviously, because a lot of stuff came broken. Where I'm getting at with that one, though, is when I had that issue happen, I reached out directly to the person I bought it from. They handled it actually really well. They reached out to the studio because they're kind of that middleman there. The studio offered to take off a percentage of the price for me, which I was happy with. I was able to actually repair most of the issues myself, and that's another thing too. If something is easily repairable and you can fix it yourself, I recommend using some Loctite glue, and I linked to the one in the description that I use personally. If it's a small issue or something you can fix yourself, you can definitely use that choice as well. But still, you want to get that money back. You are buying something that is really expensive, and you should expect to get something that is flawless. So if that happens to you, always reach out. You never know what someone's going to say, and I never expect them to respond well just because, you take the risk when buying these statues, but you want to hold them accountable because this is an issue in the community. And I'm hoping I don't have to make this video soon because no one ever wants their statues to arrive broken. But if I do, and in the event that I do, because I'm sure it will happen in the future, I will do a video for you guys showing you how I repair those pieces. Rule of thumb is, if it's something that's small, or even if you were to break something yourself, you can use some glue to fix it. But if it's something it's a big break, it's an issue, there's cosmetic problems, there's a weight bearing issue, definitely reach out for those problems. And the next thing I want to mention before I get into where I buy my anime statues from is Facebook groups. So I actually have found Facebook groups to be a really helpful place to go to if you have any questions about any statues, any studios, any sites in particular. Definitely search the group first to see if your question has been asked before, because there are commonly asked questions in there, and you'll definitely find the answer by doing that. This too is also a good place to stay up to date in all of the statue releases that are coming out, whether it be licensed or unlicensed. These groups really just kind of go over everything, keep you up to date when pre-orders are live and whatnot. I do my best on my website, and that's in the description below. I'm only one person. There's so many statues daily that are announced. I can't keep up with all of them, so I usually call out either my favorites or ones that I think are really cool on the site. So you can definitely check out that website as well. But if you're wanting to stay up to date on everything, definitely check out groups. Some of my favorites include anime statues, Figurama Collectors Hub. There's Jime Palace one specific as well. So there's studio specific ones, there's site specific ones, like Favor GK has one. So I'll link to those all in the description below and which ones I like using the most. Also, there are buy and sell statue groups as well. I'll link to that in the description below as well. Just be wary when buying on there because you want to watch out for scammers. I'm not saying everyone on there is a scammer. They definitely aren't. But you never know with strangers on the internet. Always use that goods and services from PayPal, as mentioned before, to protect yourself from buying from there. But if you're looking for something that's out of stock or harder to find, definitely use groups. To give you an example, Brad and I were having a really tough time securing Jime Kakashi. We actually had a few people looking out for us on the group, and they actually found one for us. We were able to secure him. So if you're in the search for something, definitely use groups. Okay, so this is probably what most of you guys came here for, where I buy my anime statues from, and I'm gonna split these up because where I buy unlicensed anime statues are different than where I buy licensed statues because I'm based in the US. As mentioned earlier though, if you are someone who's located closer to China or Japan, where those usually ship out from, you may want to buy from somewhere like Favor GK in comparison to some of the other licensed sites I personally recommend. But just kind of use that caution there. Depending on where you're located, you may want to choose from one of these different sites. So first up is where I buy my unlicensed statues from, and that is Favor GK. They do have licensed statues time and time on their website for sale, but since I am based in the US, it's more cost efficient for me to purchase from somewhere else, and I'll get into where I buy those later on. But Favor GK is one I've just really come to feel secure in buying from. They're really reputable. I find them to be really trustworthy. They have had the best customer service I've come across, and you guys know that I really value customer service when it comes to buying from these sites. Their site is also one of the easiest for me to navigate. It has a lot of variety. They also have worldwide shipping for those of you who are looking for that too, so that's another positive from buying from them. Also, keep an eye out because they run early bird discounts on their site, which just means they have a statue up for a certain limited amount of time when they put it up for pre-order for a discounted price, so definitely keep an eye out for those as well. If I, for some reason, can't get a statue on Favor GK or they're sold out of a statue, like I decide I want to pre-order something too late, I will buy it from Games Animation Collectibles. I've yet to have an issue with them. They have really good customer service in comparison to other sites, and they have a great variety as well. The only thing I will say is that double check your email confirmations from them when your statue is about to ship out, because I've noticed they were having some issues with jumbling up customers' information. I did get an email confirmation once that had the completely wrong address on it and someone else's name. So just double check that before your items ship just to make sure it has the right shipping information. They do have international shipping, but shipping rates vary as always. They do have a shipping rate chart on their site that you can check out. And if you have any specific questions about shipping for any of these, definitely shoot them an email to find out what their shipping's like. For licensed anime statues, though, I buy from 3 main sites. I personally purchase my licensed anime statues from Sideshow, Spec Fiction, and Comic Concepts. I personally buy from these 3 because I found that shipping tends to be lower in comparison to buying directly from the studio themselves, like whether it be Prime One or Figurama. Just because those are shipping overseas, I find the shipping rates to be way higher in comparison. And I do know that these sites tend to put up these statues for a small markup. But when I actually total the overall cost, the shipping savings I have makes that overall cost less than if I were to buy it directly from the studio. The only thing when buying from these third-party sellers with licensed statues is that your statue will arrive later in the future than if you were to buy them directly from someone like Prime One or Figurama or Sume, whatever licensed studio you're buying from. They get those statues out first, and then those third-party sellers ship them out after, so you will get them later, so that's just something to keep in mind. Another thing too is that all of these licensed sellers have rewards programs, so you definitely want to look in those too as well, because they give you points for every purchase you make, and you can use those points as like cash towards other pre-orders. Now those are just the sites I have over time found that I personally prefer. Someone may have a different experience altogether. I will say there are a few that I personally no longer buy from just because of negative experiences I've had time and time again. And these are all personal experiences. Those two are Anime Collect and Fanatic Anime Store. I've just found their customer service and there's not to be as good. And there's some red flags in particular about these two that just make me not feel secure in buying from them anymore. And there's also some I have never bought from before, like Toyokoku, and because of that, I can't attest to them. But if anyone wants to mention any they like below, definitely let us all know. And if I'll always update you guys when I buy from a new site. I have also heard great things about One Piece Treasure. I constantly see things about that one in groups. I personally haven't bought from them yet, but I do have plans to do so in the future. So when I do, I will let you guys know my experience. But anywho, those ones I mentioned above are my main go-tos, and I've linked to them all in the description below in case you'd like to check them out. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is something people probably often overlook a little bit, and that is display. So before I personally pre-order a statue, I think about two things. Where is it going to go and how am I going to display it? You also really want to be sure that the cases you are buying are sturdy enough to hold the weight of the statue you are purchasing. So on those sites, you will see an estimate of the weight of that statue. Just make sure that the statue you have will be sturdy on that shelf, because I've seen so many horror stories of people putting statues I personally own that I know are really heavy on like glass shelves. I'm like, oh no, that's really scary. I've seen them shatter. I've seen shelves collapse. I've seen them bend and bow. So really be careful with that. For me, I'm spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on these statues. I want to make sure I invest in something that is going to securely hold them and not destroy them in the future. Another thing I want to mention is that where you display your statues is important. You do not want to put your statues in direct sunlight. It can fade the paint. It can cause the pieces to melt and bow and bend and, lean and all kinds of stuff. So don't display them in direct sunlight. The other thing you want to do is make sure your statues are displayed in a cool and dry room. That's really just for kind of similar reasons. Humidity can cause statues to lean and droop over time. So you really want to make sure they're in a secure environment that's cool and dry and not in direct sunlight. In terms of what I recommend with display cases, I use Maju cases, and this is because they're dust-proof, they're really sturdy and secure, they have a modern and sleek design and a lot of customizable options as well as sizes. I had such a hard time trying to find a case for Surge Studio Itachi in particular because of the Susanoo. And I stumbled upon Maju Case's website, and they actually had one that would fit him, which was amazing because I looked everywhere. So if you have a huge statue that you can't find a case for, definitely check out their site. I will say that there are some potential negatives to buying from them. Their shipping is really, really slow. So if you need a case and know you're going to need a case, make sure you purchase it immediately, because you won't get that case for months and months and months. Also, they are pricier options, so they may not be something that everyone wants to buy. Another thing is that they are a real pain to assemble. That said, I do think they are currently the best cases on the market for statues. If you're interested in checking those out, I've linked to them in the description below, but you can also pick them up on sites like Sideshow, Comic Concepts, and Spec Fiction 2, depending on where you're located. Other than that, I've seen some people using pedestals to display their statues, and I've seen a lot of people using the site Pedestal Source. I've never personally used them before, but I do have plans to in the future. I originally thought my 1/3 scale gut statue was going to go in a case, but I actually decided I think I want that one to go on a pedestal, and they do have acrylic covers for those as well, which is awesome, and customizable sizes, so that's another option as well. And finally, if you're looking for a cheaper option, I have seen a lot of people using the IKEA Besta and Pax cases. So if you're looking for a more budget option, those are definitely a good way to go. I've heard a lot of great things from other collectors. I personally haven't used them, but I have heard great things. And there you have it, guys. There's my complete guide to collecting anime statues. If I've missed anything or you guys have any other tips, please let us all know in the comments below. I do have a huge shipment on the way, so you guys can expect a lot of unboxings in the next few months. Thanks as always for watching. I'll see you guys next time.